The story of Orleans House goes back over 300 years. It starts in 1710 with James Johnston, a politician who commissions a simple yet substantial country house. It is one of the first villas along this stretch of the Thames. By 1720, his house has a spectacular addition, the stunning Octagon Room. It was built to honour the Hanoverian monarchs, and indeed, several of them pay a visit. In 1815, the house becomes the home in exile for 2 years of Louis-Philippe, Duc d'Orléans, future king of the French. The house takes his name, becoming known as Orleans House. Louis-Philippe enjoys the tranquility of Twickenham. I bless heaven, morning, noon, and night, that I am in my peaceful house in Old Tweek. Years later, in 1844, he revisits his old home, accompanied by the young Queen Victoria. In 1852, his son, Henri, Duc de Marne, moves in. He adds a library and a gallery for his impressive art collection. But in the 20th century, the once grand house goes into decline. In 1926, demolition begins. Help comes from an unlikely place, the next-door neighbour, Mrs. Nellie Ionides. A wealthy art collector who happens to live next door buys the surviving Octagon Room and stables, saving them from demolition. Mrs. Ionides sometimes gives sparkling candlelit dinners in the Octagon Room, with the dishes ferried from her house. When she dies in 1962, she bequeaths the buildings and her art collection to the borough of Richmond. Today, her legacy is a thriving hub for culture and heritage, a place for the whole community to enjoy.
Saturday, the 13th day of August, 1729. Today there was much excitement as the Queen and the royal family came for a banquet. My master, Mr. Johnston, is now retired from politics, but still loves to entertain. And Queen Caroline is very much fond of his company and conversation. The Queen, her children, and her ladies-in-waiting were entertained in the Octagon Room by Mrs. Johnston, while Mr. Johnston entertained the Prime Minister, the Lords, and all the gentlemen-in-waiting in the hall in the house. In the Octagon, it was a charming sight. The Queen sat at the head of the horseshoe-shaped table. She placed her children with the little ones by the others that they might serve and help them. Mrs. Johnston sat at the end of the table. Queen Caroline had brought her own cook, confectioner, and even her own gold plates. And what a banquet it was! There was so much to choose from. Vermicelli soup, a haunch of venison, capon with oysters, salmi of pheasant, braised stag's tongue, chicken with peaches, quails, veal collops in white sauce, fish, ham and pigeons, and much more besides. The two princes carved for the Queen, and everyone ate their fill. Then, when the dessert came on, Mr. Johnston came in and paid his honours to the Queen. All were very merry and highly pleased.